Welcome everyone. I'll give everyone a moment to get connected. We're happy to have you join us at our session for Faculty Professional Learning, supporting faculty to succeed. My name is Tanya Scott. I am an Associate Director of Teaching and Learning at Achieving the Dream, and I'm delighted to share in this presentation with colleagues from Cuyahoga Community College, also known as Tri-C. We'll be hearing from Kevin Dranuski, Senior Instructional Designer, Sarah Good, Instructional Technologist, and Dr. Michele Hampton, a Professor of Business Administration. If you attended the last session, you were able to hear some of her insights there as well. There we go. Apologies, it wasn't advancing. The Every Learner Everywhere Network mission is to help higher educational institutions improve and ensure more equitable student outcomes through advances in digital learning, particularly among poverty-impacted, racially minoritized, and first-generation students. Every Learner partners are addressing high failure rates in foundational courses through the provision of scalable, high-quality support to colleges and universities seeking to implement adaptive courseware on their campuses. As part of its ongoing effort to help community colleges develop effective teaching and learning practices, Achieving the Dream worked with 7 community colleges in Florida, Ohio, and Texas on this initiative, providing coaching and direct support to the colleges, fostering collaboration within and among the participating institutions, and serving as a liaison to the Every Learner Network. At the onset, Cuyahoga saw the ELE's focus on gateway courses and closing achievement and completion gaps fit well with their existing focus on equity, where they had already identified gaps in student performance and had implemented specific programming and task forces to analyze and look at how to close gaps. They decided to approach the ELE initiative as a faculty-driven process and stressed that if they had not, they would not have had the level of buy-in and success that they did. Rather than promote ELE as simply a grant to introduce adaptive courseware into individual courses, they opened this up as an opportunity for faculty to participate in a faculty learning community focused on the adoption of the courseware across disciplines. This faculty-centered approach was critical to the faculty members' success, who agreed the initiative would not have been successful if it was approached as a top-down initiative. What our presenters will share with you today is their discoveries of implementing their faculty learning community model, as well as their thoughts on scaling this approach. What you'll hear is that their model had several strengths and benefits, including being cross-disciplinary, cross-campus, and highly collaborative. I'd like to welcome Kevin Dranuski, Senior Instructional Designer, to tell us the story of Tri-C's approach. Kevin.
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. So as mentioned, my name is Kevin Dranuski. I am the Senior Instructional Designer at one of our campuses at Cuyahoga Community College, or Tri-C. And I'd like to give you a little bit of how we onboarded faculty before you hear from the other 2 presenters. I work in an office that's called the Center for Learning Excellence. So I'll give you a little background about what our structure looks like before we jump into how we onboarded. So we are the Center for Learning Excellence, or we're known locally as the CLEs. And what we are campus-based hubs, and we support faculty who are full-time faculty, adjunct faculty, in addition to staff if the projects kind of align with what we're working on. We are located on each of our 4 main campuses spread across the greater Cleveland area. And our intent is to provide streamlined access for faculty to instructional support. Our CLEs have senior instructional designers, instructional technologists. In 2 locations that we have a larger number of population of faculty, we also have part-time instructional support specialists whose expertise provide kind of both technology and design. They're like a little jack of all trades. But what the CLEs do, we promote instructional design theories and practices. We just work with faculty on any individual or discipline-specific projects or initiatives. We help them develop their courses, aligning them to course outcomes and objectives, and also recommend and support instructional technologies to enhance the teaching and learning that promotes student success. So that gives you a little scope of kind of the individuals where I'm coming from with our department and how we contributed to this project. Like I said, we are on each campus, so it was a widespread effort. If you look at the slide here, these are kind of the gateway courses when we were approached to take on this adaptive courseware project. It was a diverse group. We had courses in Introduction to Business, Biological Chemistry, A&P, Microbiology, the chemistries, microeconomics, algebra, psychology, and physics. So it was a very diverse group, and which I think helped us, and really drove our faculty learning communities, which we'll get into a little more in a few minutes here. So let's jump to the next slide here. So the first thing when we sat down and figured, how are we going to collaborate with all of the faculty members in all of these disciplines that are located on 4 different locations? And we thought what we would do first is to establish some type of central point or like a hub of information sharing. So at Tri-C, we use Blackboard as our LMS, and we thought it would be best to create like a resource site that all of the designers and technologists, administrative staff and faculty would have access to. And we did this, and it created, we used it to share announcements and updates about, projects and deadlines coming up. When we were scheduling vendor demonstrations, so faculty could see the different vendors and the disciplines that they supported. We had information about our FLCs, upcoming sessions, topics, suggestions. But we also, from an instructional design and technology standpoint, we really focused on creating a courseware guide, which Sarah might jump into in a little bit, where we had rubrics to evaluate software and course content, in addition to like syllabus statements and other supplemental content that would help faculty communicate the project and the scope of this initiative. This allowed us to easily communicate with all the faculty. We can post announcements regularly. It got sent to their email addresses. So that way there was a central point. And it also gave us a great opportunity to sit back and reflect of everything that we've done, month after month after month, and really see what was working and what wasn't working. One of the biggest takeaways from this was probably our adaptive courseware resource guide, where Sarah led up this initiative to develop this courseware guide that vetted several different adaptive courseware vendors and by discipline, so the faculty didn't have to do that all on their own. We looked at the compatibility of the courseware with our LMSs. We looked at the accessibility of the content, and then to make sure that the content aligned with what the faculty was looking for, and made sure that it aligned with our course outcomes and objectives. So if you can see those images there, these are just a few screenshots of some of the items that were in this Blackboard resource site. We had some presentations with the folks from ELE and ATD who shared presentations with us. And you can see what a link of the courseware guide looked like. If we go to the next slide, we have some screenshots of what it looked like when we were scheduling upcoming vendor demonstrations. So what we saw, we had faculty who were attending the vendor demonstrations that were appropriate for their discipline, but also, when they saw that we had upcoming webinars and demonstrations for other disciplines, we had faculty across disciplines still attending those just to see the features and the functions where other courseware might offer that, they can educate themselves to figure out, that's something that they might want in theirs. And that's how they establish relationships with a vendor rep or something like that. So these are just some examples of beginner sessions. And then if we had any users who were experienced in ALEX, more advanced, we made sure to very clearly define what the outcomes and objectives are so that no one was wasting their time. This was a large scale project. Faculty dedicated a lot of time and effort. So we wanted to make sure that we made things as efficient and easy for them. We can go to the next slide here. We also had items such as like ESU time forms, where the administrative components of the project staff were making sure that the faculty were being compensated for their work, and all, that they didn't have to worry about reaching out. Everything was in this central hub, and there's the courseware guide I was mentioning. And then in the next slide, we have just three more samples that come from more of the ID and the IT perspective, where we had designing with adaptive courseware, instructional design consultation strategies for our designers who are working with faculty once we split out into teams, and sample syllabus statements that were provided and ones that our faculty were coming up with to share amongst the FLC. When we worked with faculty, we made sure we wanted to kind of continue that diverse set of collaboration. So each faculty member was partnered with an instructional designer and an instructional technologist to research what adaptive courseware was appropriate for them. Once they selected an adaptive courseware, the designer worked with them to make sure that the content that they were using would align to our course outcomes and objectives. And then the technologist would help implement the courseware and make sure that all compatibilities and functionalities were working as demonstrated. So it was nice to see, because we had designers and technologists from different campuses on the same team. And it really gave us, internally as the CLEs, stronger working relationships, because we were working so closely with individuals that we normally wouldn't work with, face to face, because, we're just on different campuses, even though we still meet virtually and, by email and chat. So let's go to the next slide here. And I think one of the biggest success of, our project, in addition to, the courseware working, was our faculty learning communities. And I'm going to give you just an overview of what it is if you're not familiar with it. And then I will let you hear more from a faculty perspective of their insights and experiences. But if you are not familiar with a faculty learning community or an FLC, it was a group of peer-led faculty members who engaged in active collaborative programming that we scheduled. And it was structured to provide, encouragement, support, and reflection across all aspects of our project. Each FLC had its own theme, or a question or a set of problems that we were experiencing, or just a topic that they were passionate about if, once things got rolling. We rotated and this is pre-COVID when we launched this FLC. We rotated to different campuses for in-person interaction and discussion. And I remember this being a sticking point where we made the decision to require that our FLCs were done in person, just because we really wanted the support of the campus, all of our resources. And we felt that if we gave virtual options, more people would kind of, if schedules were tight, they would, tend to go to those, and we would lose a little bit of that in-campus or in-person interaction. And then we had, the CLEs helped facilitate and lead these sessions. We took topic suggestions from the faculty. We had topics that were generated by our administrative staff if it pertained to the grant project. So every FLC went flawless. If I remember correctly, we generally ran over time because faculty continued to talk and it spurred more discussion. But I can't say enough about them. And I think in our next slide here, I'll pass it over to Dr. Hampton, and she will share her insights and experiences of being a faculty member who has gone through this process. So Dr. Hampton.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
So actually, the highlight of this project for me was the faculty learning community. And I am in my 23rd year of teaching. So I have been on many initiatives that some better than others, some worked and some didn't. And so when this initiative showed up, they were like, oh, we want you to be part of. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to do this. Don't put my name on the formal list. I will go to the meeting. I will sit in the back. I am not saying yes to this. And so I went to the meeting and I sat in the back. I did listen. And by the end of the meeting, I was sold. And I'm not an easy sell because I've been around a while, right? So the thing that sold me though was the commitment from ATD and ELE, that they were going to be there, that it wasn't just, oh, here's a project, we'll see you in 6 months, you guys can report to us what you've done. Also, a big selling point for me was that it was going to be all of us together. It was the people from the CLEs. It was other faculty members. We had two co-administrative leads. The fact that we did commit that we were going to meet in person, and I went, this actually may not be that bad. We might actually be able to do some good work through here. And I think we actually did some excellent work through here. It was really my highlight. I'm not a big meeting person. I'm definitely not a committee person, but this I looked forward to every month. And Kevin's right. We just talked and we talked and we talked, but it wasn't just talking to be talking. We really did learn from each other. I think Kevin kind of laid out for you what our CLEs do. And I can't emphasize enough how important it was to have them be part of this as well, because just as we meet our students where they are, they have to meet us as faculty members where we are. I'm pretty comfortable with technology. We had other faculty members that were like scared out of their minds that they were going to have to use technology at this level. But having the resource of your own instructional designer, you know, your own person telling you, you can do it. Come on, let's sit down and look at it together. That really made the difference. I don't think we would have had these many faculty members show up and stay. I don't think we would have gotten these many courses designed and implemented without that. We were collaborative, we learned from each other. And I think as a faculty member, I really did feel supported. And so, yeah, I understand instructional design. Yes, I can design my own classes. Yes, I understand the technology, but I needed some help with some things sometimes too, if nothing else but a sounding board. And so the fact that we were all there together really made a big difference. I think that's what made the project successful. Next slide. So I was responsible for the business and economics courses, and actually on Kevin's slide, he had 10 classes. We ended up finishing with 13, if you guys can believe that. We added a couple more along the way, but Courseware, I used McGraw-Hill Connect. It was not the only thing that was used in our FLC. Some of us use Lumen and with an OER solution. Some of us use Alex. So some of us use Pearson MyLab. So there was a variety of courseware that was used. Of course, you know, Courseware, all of them have their pluses, they have their minuses, and it depends on what content you're teaching and what discipline area you're in on what would make sense for you. In my area, McGraw-Hill Connect made sense for me. I did deep integration links with Blackboard. What that means in layman's terms is if you click, you have two ways to get over to an adaptive courseware system or any other kind of third-party system that you're integrated with. You can click and go over into that system and then navigate your way through Connect, for example. Or you can click on an assignment in Blackboard, have it drop you into that specific assignment in Connect and bring you right back to Blackboard. That's what deep link integration was. I thought it was a better seamless solution than, I don't like dropping students off into some third-party piece of software and they're, you know, milling around. And so that's what the deep integration link with Blackboard was. The courseware cost, depending on whether it was a business or an economics class, they had different pricing, but it was either $76 or $87. Part of this and part of what we did in our faculty learning community is we put all of our courses on what's called inclusive access. For us, it was the first day program. So on the first day of class, all students had access to whatever they needed for their class. In my case, it would have been to their Connect sites. And it was, they didn't have to go to the bookstore to do anything. The fee was added in into their bill. And so that was something that we worked on that wasn't directly related to adaptive courseware, but it was something that we could all put in place that would help the students as we were implementing the adaptive courseware. So the application of the adaptive technology, how it was used, how I used it in my area, it was used as homework to reinforce concepts. I used simulations that depending on how students answered the question, they were taken down a different branch of a decision tree. there were McGraw-Hill creates custom recharge assignments based on how a student performed on homework or on a particular assessment. If they were having trouble with mastering a particular concept, Connect kind of put together a custom test or a custom review guide, if you will, for them that was not graded. It would just be to help them study and master the concepts that they may have been having problems with. Also, as part of this, the content for my economics classes, I moved to an all digital platform. So I pretty much got rid of the textbook. There is a printed student companion that goes along with it, but there's no traditional textbook. So all of the content was delivered through publisher created videos. Another big part of this project was data. And I think going into it, I didn't quite I knew we were going to collect some data, but I didn't understand how important it was. I didn't understand how much about it I did not know that was going on with my own classes. We're a pretty large institution, and so clearly we collect data, but from a faculty perspective, I never saw the data. I never saw the data about my own classes. And so that was eye-opening for me, and it helped me get in the mindset of, I can use this to improve my courses. And that's exactly what we've done. And so, for example, in my microeconomics class, my pass rates are now up to 91%, which is pretty darn good for econ, because nobody, I won't say nobody, we'll say 98% of people, when you mention the word econ, you get, So to have, to hold on to students, to keep them engaged with each other, with me, with the content, I'm pretty proud of that. In our Introduction to Business course, that's our gateway course for business administration. And our average course grade has improved by a half letter grade. And it's still on the upward trend. And so what I can say is it works. But then, it works if you work it. It doesn't work on its own. We are all not redesigning, but we're all tweaking our courses every semester. We're adding things, we're modifying things, we're deleting things. And so it's a living, breathing thing. You don't do it once and it's done. Next slide. I won't read this to you. I will give you a moment to read it, but this is some of the student feedback. My students were involved in focus groups, and this is some of the feedback that they gave. The second one is kind of funny to me, because the ABA assignments are the simulations. Well, guess what? You can't Google it. You can't, you can't easily, find the answer. You can't go on WCAG. You actually have to apply the concepts. And so this student was like, I tended to struggle with the assignment. Well, yeah, because it's important that I know and that you know that you can actually apply the concepts that you're learning. But in the end, they really were like real life simulations. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And that was exactly my intention when I added that to my course. Next slide. Is Sarah.
All right, thanks, Michelle. So I'm going to take a few minutes to focus on kind of the big picture of our faculty learning community and this adaptive courseware implementation from the instructional design and technology perspective, and talk about a few successes and some challenges that we had in this process. And some of this Kevin and Michelle have already touched on, but I want to reinforce this first one because they're truly awesome, and that none of this would have gone as well as it did without our faculty. They had a choice to participate in this. A call was put out to gather interested faculty, and many of them hadn't experienced adaptive courseware before, but they had a willingness to step out of their comfort zone to help improve student success rates in their courses, and they made a commitment to this process. So not only did they commit themselves to learning all about adaptive courseware and the implementation, they also committed their time and efforts to the faculty learning community. And while the college has had faculty learning communities for a while, not everyone had participated in them before. So some faculty were getting themselves into a new experience there.
And they weren't as good as ours.
Exactly, they definitely were not. So this is in large part a success because our faculty were willing to try something new and dedicated themselves to this process to help their students. And Kevin mentioned this at our institution. We are spread out over 4 campuses, and we often tend to operate in our own little silos. And if you're at a larger institution, you probably understand this. And even in the Centers for Learning Excellence, where Kevin and I work, we didn't collaborate a ton with our colleagues, at least not as much as we could have. And as much as I feel like we do now, we're all busy. And I think this is true for faculty as well. It's very easy to walk down the hall or go to the office next door when we had questions or wanted to work on projects together. And this was all pre-COVID. And sometimes it's hard to believe that we just didn't regularly hop on Zoom meetings to collaborate. It's kind of just become second nature. And this was also a point that Kevin made. One aspect of the faculty learning community that we decided on fairly early was that we chose not to offer a virtual meeting option until COVID forced us to go completely remote. But we wanted everyone to be in that same room together, to see each other, to have those informal get to know you conversations that you don't often get to have when you're meeting virtually. And at these meetings, faculty were able to share how they were doing with their courseware, the implementation, bounce ideas off of each other. And I feel like they, as well as CLE staff, left each of those meetings with something to think about or a solution to an issue they're having. And it was at these meetings that we truly, I think, built a wonderful sense of community and collaboration in an environment where we could learn from each other and we're open to others' ideas. The administrative team had divided up the disciplines involved with the adaptive rollout among the Center for Learning Excellence staff, and each discipline got paired with a designer and technologist, as Kevin covered earlier. And we got to work with faculty that we probably never would have worked with if we didn't have this grant opportunity. So the way our administrative leads, Dwayne and Kara, kind of set us up, put us in a great spot to make this a truly collaborative effort across the college. So another important piece of this rollout, as Michele mentioned, was the Center for Learning Excellence's participation as part of the FLC. We were there for every meeting. It wasn't just something we got brought into on occasion. We were a consistent support presence throughout the entire process. And while we were very active at the outset in helping faculty vet the different coursewares, assist with vendor demos, help get courses designed and ready to go for the semester, it didn't stop there. We were, continually available as a support resource after the course got started and through subsequent semesters if faculty wanted to change their design, make tweaks, or if they wanted to switch things up and go with a different courseware vendor. So sitting back and reflecting on this experience, it was just wonderful to see the successes that faculty were experiencing and seeing how they used the information they got from the adaptive courseware to modify their instruction based on student performance. And this is information that several of them, and including students too, may not have seen or utilized extensively before. So while we in large part had just wonderful rollouts of these adaptive technologies, that's not to say that we were completely without some hiccups. So part of being in this support position is being able to celebrate the successes of our faculty and students, but also to be there to help them when things don't go all that great and help them kind of find a solution to make things go better. And one particular example of this that comes to mind is one of our faculty I was working with had, like most of them, decided to try something new and chose an adaptive technology that looked promising and seemed to check the boxes of what she felt had been missing from the previous courseware she was using with her classes. And I won't go into a whole lot of specifics other than to say both she and I spent a lot of time with the vendor rep and their support team trying to get the courseware to do what we thought it should have been able to do to begin with, and kind of what we thought we had been promised. And then their defense, the tech team for this particular vendor was eventually able to remedy a lot of the issues we had, but we did have to spend a lot of time in meetings with them to get the product to do what they originally said it should. So our issues got resolved, but the semester ended up being kind of stressful. And this faculty member, she ended up changing things and going back to the courseware that she had been using before, only she chose to implement an adaptive learning piece that she had not previously been using. And we had weighed the pros and cons of sticking it out with a new vendor for another semester. And I think it was helpful for her to just have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and have a group there that was going to be supportive regardless of what direction she decided to go. So I think the big takeaway we learned here after the first semester is that it's totally okay to make a pivot if you don't think things are going as well as they should. And if it's not in the best interest of your students and your faculty, it's okay to make a change. You're not stuck with it. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Michele so she can tell us a little bit more about how she and her colleagues scaled their adaptive efforts in business and economics courses.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Now you can hear me. So I'll get into a few more specifics regarding the business and economics course scaling because I'm doing it, so I understand. But I will also mention that psychology also scaled their course. They are using the Lumen software again. And so it's spread across 3 campuses, I believe. The 2 campuses, it's spread across 2 campuses. I am responsible for the business and economics course scaling, and it's spread across 3 campuses, 5 courses, and for fall, that's how many students were impacted by this course design and adaptive courseware implementation in my classes. So it includes roughly 13 adjunct faculty members, 4 full-time faculty members. I've put together training for people that don't know what any of this is and how to get started with it. I make myself available the whole semester if there are questions. I've added myself as an additional instructor in their Blackboard courses. So if they have difficulties, I can go in the class and kind of see what's going on and help walk them through fixing it. As we're rolling out the scaling, here's our CLEs again, right? What a fabulous resource. So Sarah was at the meeting at one of the campuses, the campus that she's at, as we're rolling it out to the adjuncts so that if they have questions, she knows what the heck I've done if they come to her to ask her what's going on, and that the adjuncts know that she's there as a resource, you know, that we do have people there to help you that do understand what happened in this project. And so Heather, who's not on this call, she's our CLE person for East Campus. Heather and Sarah are involved in the scaling effort as well as a resource to both full-time and adjunct faculty members. So we set the courses up together. Logistically, I create a master course Connect shell. I create a master Blackboard course shell, and I create a coordinating course calendar. It's provided for each one of the courses for each part of term. So for example, if we offer intro to business full term, 14-week, first 8 weeks, second 8 week, in the summer, we'll have 10 weeks and sometimes 5 weeks. I create a master course shell for all of those variations on the theme and then get those pushed out to the appropriate faculty members who then upload them both, pair them together, and administer the course. And so in the beginning, you know, it was, gee, that's a lot of work. And yeah, it is. It's not an easy task every semester. You know, I've begun automating some parts of it, so it's getting a little better. And so the trade-off was, do I let adjuncts do it, or do, you know, I kind of keep that function centralized? And I think keeping that function centralized is where I landed, because it really helps with coordination across campuses on what we're teaching. It lends itself to the integrity of the course. We know exactly, we're teaching what we told the state we would be teaching, and can prove it and know that it's all there. If we switch editions, it's upgraded for everybody. And so I've been an adjunct faculty member. I was for about 9 years. And I know what it's like. I mean, to expect an adjunct faculty member to design a course, implement adaptive courseware in that course, and make sure that, everything is pedagogically sound is just ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. And so to support our adjunct faculty members, that's what we've chosen to do in business and econ. And psychology has pretty much followed our model as well. So that's kind of the structure that we've used and are using to scale our courses. We'll be scheduling, we have a meeting scheduled next week with our everybody that used the courseware that you kind of see on this table, just to understand how the semester go, what can we do for next semester to improve, what student feedback. So they'll be bringing their student feedback to the meeting so that I can then see how the course is going and see what improvements need to be made to those master course shells as we move forward. So that's what we're up to.
Great, and that actually brings us to our Q&A section, and we actually have a question. There's a question here. I'm just reading the question, one moment.
Okay.
The structure and the follow through of faculty. Oh, there's a question about faculty compensation around this process.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was there faculty compensation, and what did that look like?
There was faculty compensation. As you can imagine, this was a lot of work, and it was something that was new. That's not what we normally do. And we still had our regular course load to teach for a particular semester. I'm trying to remember what the compensation was, in all honesty. I think we got the equivalent, well, it was release time. And I think we got the equivalent of 3 credit hours of release time per semester to work on this project. So it will be the equivalent of 1 class.
Mm-hmm. 1 class, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, and I have another question for you, Michele, and it's a 3-part question.
Oh boy.
Okay, so I'll read it all first, and then you can pick which part you want to answer, okay?
Okay.
So I'll read it all. What were some ways you shifted your course design to accommodate for the integration of the adaptive courseware? First question. What did you find most helpful? And were there things you did early on you wish you had known not to do?
So tell me the first one again.
What were some ways you shifted your course design to accommodate the integration of adaptive courseware?
I didn't, and I would say that you shouldn't. Your course design is your course design, and then you should go figure out how to support your course design. If adaptive courseware supports it, great. If it doesn't, then move on. That's not the solution for your particular course. So my view, this is my own personal view, is that you should design the course with no software in mind. And then try to figure out where technology becomes an enabler, because I don't believe you should add technology to a class just to have technology in the class. And so in my view, it needs to lend itself to what you're trying to get accomplished in that particular class. So adaptive courseware should not drive your course design, in my view.
Great, thank you. And then what did you find most helpful about adaptive courseware?
The fact that we could meet students where they are. No 2 students are at the same place. And so even though they may start at different places, the thing that really was a highlight for me is that I could get them all to end up at the same place, or at least I had a better chance of getting everybody to end up at the same place. And so that would be my answer to that part of the question.
Wonderful. And then last question. What did you wish you had known not to do when you took on this initiative?
I don't know, because I don't think I would do it any differently. And as Sarah said, everything didn't go smoothly, but I don't think I would do it any differently, because that learning was important, and not just for me, but I learned, I mean, the person she's talking about was a math faculty member. I don't teach math, but I learned from that experience. I learned from the experience of my psychology colleagues using Lumen and some of the strengths of Lumen that I didn't have in my particular adaptive courseware solution. So I don't think I would do anything any differently.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michele. I have a question for Sarah. If you had a faculty ask you to support them in integrating adaptive courseware into their course, where would you start?
So if I had a faculty member come to me expressing an interest in this type of courseware, now that we have the resource, I would direct them to the courseware guide, the adaptive courseware guide that our department created for this. In the guide, we had a list of courseware vendors broken down by discipline, cost, and various other features, just so faculty could get an idea of what all was available in their particular discipline. And based on that, I would encourage the faculty member to check out the vendor websites just to learn a bit more about the vendors and the different products that they offer. And then I'd be more than happy to work with faculty to arrange some individual demos with one of the vendor reps. And also really important is I would want to make sure the faculty member would get a demo login to the product so they can experience the courseware for themselves. And there's different types of adaptive technology out there, ranging from AI and machine learning to student-centered confidence indicators, where the courseware adapts based on how well a student thinks they understand the topic. So the faculty member might get into the courseware and kick the tires a little bit and decide that's not quite the adaptive experience that they want for their students, and they can go a different direction before we go down the path of actually implementing that. So as a good starting point, I'd begin with selecting a few vendors and getting some demos and testing them out. This will also help the faculty members see if the courseware is going to cover all the course outcomes and objectives, and to what degree they will need to supplement the content to make sure everything's covered.
Besides the faculty having opportunity to kind of try out the courseware, did students have any input on what was selected in any of the courses?
I'm actually going to defer that to Michele because she's got a great example of that.
Yes, actually, outside of this whole, before we started this project, remember I said I started in 2018 before we began this whole thing. And so what I did, I knew I wanted to move in that direction. And there were two products out at the time. And so I had my econ class pilot both. And so we did 2 chapters in one of the pieces of courseware, and we did another 2 chapters in the other courseware. And I had them decide and vote on which one they thought was the best that they would want to use going forward. I already had my own opinion, but I did not share it with them, so it's not to taint the vote, but they chose what I would have chosen. And so that's how we ended up with McGraw-Hill Connect. That was their choice. And actually, I made this huge deal out of it because I was so proud of my students, and I had this big party, and the publishers flew in from, their marketing team flew in from Boston, and they did a formal focus group with my students, and the students were all prepared and they had their notes, and it was just, I was just so proud of them. But we were the only community college that was allowed to participate in the pilot. And so they did a really good job, and I think they made the right decision, and that's what we're still using today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Then I have one more question, and this is directed at Kevin. If you were asked to lead upscaling the faculty learning community you supported at Tri-C to a new department that had never experienced adaptive courseware before, where would you start?
Good question. Well, the nice thing about this is I would be able to reflect on my prior experience with an FLC regarding adaptive courseware, which, when we started these back in 2019, I was not completely familiar with adaptive courseware and, the full capabilities of it as well. So being able to speak to it more would be helpful. But what I'd like to see is first establish consistency, make sure that all the meetings are scheduled out for the entire year and that they accommodate everyone's schedule. Because you don't want people to run into class conflicts and have to miss some sessions, because that's when, that once that domino falls, they all fall. And I think that was a big success point to our FLC, is just how dedicated the faculty were of attending each one. I would definitely include individuals, maybe not the size that we had, but designers or technologists on there so that they can provide guidance, support, or answer any questions that come up in the FLC regarding technology or implementation. Maybe someone from our e-learning department or our online learning department, and then any administrator leads. I would early in the FLC, I would like to bring someone from our previous FLC to share their experience of what went well, and to encourage faculty to ask questions and step outside of their comfort zones. I think Michele mentioned in one part that, you know, one of our FLCs had nothing to do with adaptive courseware and everything to do with our bookstore implementation, because the very first summer, we rolled this out pretty quick. I think we formed the FLC in the group in March, and we were piloting that summer for some of these classes. So there were some bookstore hiccups. And so we decided, you know, the next FLC, we're going to invite our Barnes and Noble reps, our bookstore reps, and talk it out. And we came up with a solution from one FLC meeting. And that, you know, that impact was that inclusive, you know, first day policy, where now every class who was part of this program, every single student had all of their materials and supplies and access on day one. There was no hiccups. There was no one catching up. There was no one waiting for those, you know, those checks. And then I think, you know, through that discussion as well was, we really found that faculty had some serious negotiating power when it came to the adaptive courseware pricing. You know, we had faculty members who were turning over $200 textbooks and making, you know, adopting courseware that was $50 to $75, and coming from a community college, that's huge for us. So I would, and then I would poll the faculty, what type of topics, or what kind of questions do they have, what type of, what kind of topics that they would like to see covered, and structure that, basing it off the success that we had from our previous one. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have a couple of minutes left before we end our session. I'm going to turn it over to the audience. If you have any questions, I'll welcome you to unmute. That'll save us some time from typing in the chat. So please do unmute and ask any questions you may have of our panelists.
See, Michele was that good again. So that's
You're right.
so.
Is there faculty interested in implementing courseware in your courses? Love to hear. No, you knocked it out of the park, everyone. You just answered everyone's questions. It's wonderful. Excellent. Well, we have a couple of minutes that we can end early. I want to thank everyone for coming, your engagement, and a special thank you to our panelists as well, and sharing your experiences. I think there is some really amazing work that's been done, and there's a lot to learn from Tri-C. So thank you for sharing your experiences. Oh, thank you, presenters. Yes, big applause. And the experience definitely has led to other faculty engagement as you learn, and obviously as you continue to share, I'm sure more folks are going to come on board and adopt this courseware as well. But thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm just going to check the chat one more time to see if there's any other questions. We do not. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.